Alright, this is Ubaid on behalf of Electronics, and in this video we're going to be talking about commercial banks and deposits. Alright, now when it comes to commercial banks, when you make a deposit into your checking account or your savings account, it is technically a short-term liability for the bank. Okay, so it's a short-term liability for the bank. All right, because you're able to withdraw that money on demand. Let's say you need that money tomorrow, you should be able to withdraw that money from the bank tomorrow. As a result of which, okay, the management within the bank is responsible for these short-term liabilities as well as long-term assets. Because if these are not managed in the correct way, it may lead to bankruptcy. Okay, so basically, okay, what ends up happening is, okay, if the banks, if they issue mortgages, for example, is considered a long-term asset because banks receive interest on those mortgage loans. Okay, so this is long-term assets. And as mentioned in the past couple of videos, okay, banks, they lend long and borrow short. What that means is they borrow short-term liabilities such as whatever you deposit in your checking account and savings account, and they issue mortgage loans, personal loans, private, auto loans, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is long-term assets. So when you make a deposit as a client, this is what your T account will look like. Okay, so suppose you have assets and liabilities over here. Okay, this is not something you put on top of a T account, but just to understand how this works, suppose you have assets and liabilities. All right, so further down, okay, you have your transactional deposits. Okay, so transactional deposit will be a short-term liability. So I'm going to use TD, transactional deposit. Okay, and then asset will be, let's say, your mortgages. Okay, so mortgage loan. All right, so banks, what they do, they issue long-term liabilities, which is an asset over here, and they borrow short-term deposits. Okay, so when a customer makes a transaction, let's say a customer deposits money in his account, and let's say he deposits $200. Okay, when you look at your T account, the bank may have reserves as well. Okay, some money set aside in their vault. So this will be reserves over here. This is what they will start off with, because obviously you need some money on this side for emergency, for giving out loans, okay, in case the bank is running short of money, okay, because they did borrow a lot of money from other places and they haven't received as much money from mortgages and other loans that they issued. Okay, as a result of which, if the banks have reserves, which they usually do to avoid bankruptcy, okay, and by law they're required to keep a certain amount of reserves, let's say 5 to 10% of what they have overall, okay, their assets. Okay, so reserves, okay, plus, let's say this person deposits $200, so this will be $200 as a deposit. Okay, and the liability will also be, okay, $200 on your T account. So let's say this is your transactional deposit. And you will add $200 on this end as well for your T account. Because even though the bank is receiving money as an asset, okay, even though this is an asset because it's money that the bank has at this point in time, okay, it is technically an asset that the bank can lose any given time when the customer demands it, right? So technically speaking, this is, as I said before, it's a transactional deposit. It's a liability. So you have to add $200 to your transactional deposit, okay, and $200 to your reserve on your T account, all right? And say, for example, okay, you have cash waiting to be collected. So let's say you have accounts receivable. So when you have accounts receivable, you're going to say accounts receivable. Okay, let's say the customer deposits $500. So you're going to put $500 over here. And over here, you're going to say TD, transactional deposit, $500. Because anytime you make a deposit, obviously, your assets should equal liabilities on your T account. So you will add $500 to your accounts receivable or cash in collection and $500 to your transactional deposits. All right. Now, when the cash is collected, okay, this will become reserves. So accounts receivable becomes reserves. Okay, and you will add $500 over here. And this will be TD plus $500. All right. And again, if you were to write this on the balance sheet, okay, suppose you have your balance sheet, okay, something like this. You start off with your assets. Okay, and for assets, you will type in your reserves. And your reserves will be, let's say, $600. And let's say further down you have liabilities. And your liabilities will be your transactional deposit, for example. Transactional deposit. And since you added $500, since the customer made a deposit of $500, you'll put this as $500. Okay, you had reserves to start off with as a bank, as a commercial bank, and then you got $500 from a customer, okay, who made a deposit to his or her checking account. Okay, so that will be it for this video. On behalf of Electronics, this is Ubaid. Have yourself a great day.